Yes, we are back live from the man cave. This is our second playthrough, and this time we are really live in the same location for the first time in a while. This is Serious Jest. Got my man CraigMakk right here. What's up, CraigMakk?
What's going on, aka fuck you? I'm here for the show. I'm very excited. This is the first time we've done an actual on location in a while, so I'm pretty pumped about this, dude.
Yes, sir. Yes, we are live from the we'll call this the Ombre Cave.
Yeah.
This is the satellite man cave.
We're branching out. We got satellites now. We're legit.
Well, let's hear what this lady has to say.
Welcome to the Detroit experience. I'm an android and I'll be your hostess.
Sex hostess?
Before we begin,
She looks like that chick from Westworld. Not really,
Yeah.
but it's just the same kind of deal here.
That means we're going to bang her at some point.
The hell experience.
I love this game already.
Are they correct?
Are they correct? Let's see. Let's change that to French.
Of course.
English.
Ancient
subtitles.
Aramaic.
Let's do subtitles on. But we'll
Yes,
do that
definitely.
shit small so you guys can read along at home. We're
Let's
good?
make them a little bit. Make them a little bigger. Just so.
Make 'em medium?
Yeah, there you go.
All right, use this example to validate the font size of your subtitle. All right, I'm ready to go. We're good?
Hell yeah.
Continue. Keep changes. Yes.
Please adjust your screen settings.
Thank you, lady. All right. That looks... Let's do slightly... There we go. Is that good? Or no, that's supposed to be
And I'd make it a little brighter, a little brighter. You want it to be barely visible.
Right.
Barely, a
And
little
then that's technically supposed to be not visible, but is that
more.
okay?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
what you mean.
Cool. We want to make sure you guys can see this shit at home because the internet fucks everything up.
Now select your profile.
Ooh, what profile?
Do you like to be spanked?
I want immersive gameplay with advanced controls, a fair challenge where mistakes can mean losing a character. Let's do experienced. I want to focus on the story with some of the controls, fewer chances to lose a character. Oh, should we go all in? I want to lose some characters.
You do want to lose?
Yeah, why
go for
not?
it.
Fuck it,
However
we're all
you do.
in.
We're
That's
all
how we do
Westworld.
it.
We're going to the far reaches of the Westworld map.
Oh shit! Why is she gazing off on the side like that? I'm right
She's like-
here. I'm right. Oh, there you should look back.
Yeah.
Nice, thank you. Here we go.
When
Listen.
this sign is displayed, please do not turn off your console.
Yeah, I've played video games before. Thanks, lady.
You are now ready to begin Detroit.
Jesus Christ.
Remember, this is not just a story.
It's a video game.
This
Oh, okay. Oh, I didn't know she was going to say that. That makes sense. All right. Here we go.
Oh, it's launching us right into the game right away. Oh,
Oh,
shit.
shit. August 15th.
Damn. All right.
There we go.
Well, I'm going to crack beers while you play this and
That's
hand you a
perfect.
beer, and then we'll talk about the beer later.
Okay.
All right?
Yes,
Not
sir.
usually how we like to do it, but
No,
we don't want to
usually-
keep Connor waiting.
Oh, no.
Fuck.
Oh, no.
Party foul.
All right. So that little thing, I'm assuming,
It's a quarter.
is the way of saying that that dude is an android. That little blue quarter thing on his forehead.
Negotiator on site.
Negotiator on site. Here we go. Oh, okay. We're playing. There we go. I couldn't tell it
I'm
wasn't.
gonna give you a
there.
heads up. You're under a time clock, so
Yes.
shit does happen. If you sit there and don't do shit, shit happens.
There's something over there, but I can't do anything with it now.
Please,
Oh, okay.
Come save my little girl. Wait. You're sending an android?
All right, ma'am. You need to go.
You can't do that. Why aren't you sending a real person?
Hey, that's mean. Racist. Alright, hold R2. There we go. Oh, okay, fine. Oh, what's going on?
I don't give a shit. My men are ready to step in. Just give the order.
Talk to Captain Allen first, I will. Let's see. It's like the Terminator walking around.
Captain Allen,
Oh,
My name is Connor.
interesting voice.
I'm the android sent by CyberLife.
Cyberlife.
It's firing and everything that moves.
Oh, why'd it say that
It already shot down 2 of my men.
it was muted?
We could easily get it, but they're on the edge of the balcony. If it falls, she falls.
Alright,
Do you know if it's been
Let's
behaving
see.
strangely before this?
I haven't got a clue. Does it matter?
I need information.
That's
to
why I
determine its
asked.
touch.
let's see.
Connor's voice is hilarious.
Do you know
Yeah, it
whose
is.
name?
Do you know its name?
Listen. Saving that kid is all that matters.
Don't be a dick.
So either you deal with this fucking android now, or I'll take care of it.
Oh, he's kind of being a...
Or my name isn't Lone Wolf Jackson,
Every second counts. 48%.
renegade cop.
Understand what happened. Saving the hostage at all costs. Okay. Let's see. Where's this motherfucker? Search the hostage's room. What? Oh, damn. That sucks for that guy. Oh, damn. He got fucked up. Alright, so let's look there. Let's see what this is going on here. Okay. Left kidney perforated, fatal abdominal tragedy. Trauma. Cool. Okay.
So again, I don't want you to think that you don't have time to review everything,
Right.
right? Like, don't rush through it so that you don't
Right.
thoroughly look at shit. But I'm telling you, you sit too long on something and stick around
Shit will
like
go
I
down,
did,
right.
right? Shit'll just happen. There's enough time to do everything you need to do, and bonus. In fact, the more shit you find around the room, the better your chances of success are.
Right.
But at some point, shit's just gonna happen, and
Gotcha. Lower lung hemorrhage, internal bleeding. I found 3 of the 4. Is there something? Oh, there we go. Deceased, John Phillips. Oh, reconstructed. Oh, that's cool as shit. This is like a little Batman shit here. Alright, I'm down with this. He got the shit fucked out of him. Oh, that sucks. He was just hanging out watching TV.
yeah,
Poor
Don
guy.
Man said Lone Wolf would have already ended his house.
His father was holding something. Rewind to search for a new clue. Oh, okay. Watch where that thing went. There we go. Alright.
Unlock the ability to find something else now.
There we go. Use the right
Now you
stick to
can get
move
out
the
of that.
camera.
No, so like you're basically you're done with that.
Okay,
2
yeah.
of 2 is, and now you saw that something else
Right,
unlocked.
so now I
in the
can go
room.
look and find that guy. There we go. Oh shit. Okay. Unlock that bad boy. Oh, that sucks for you. You were about to buy a new robot and you got fucked up.
Yeah, that's
Alright,
like,
so
that's
obviously
like when
this
your girl
deviant
finds
did
you
not want to
cheating.
be replaced.
Yeah, he was like, what?
You've unlocked it. Oh, that sucks.
Oh, see, that's why I said shit happens after a while. That motherfucker.
He got pissed. He was like, I ain't got time for this bullshit. Alright. How do I do? There we go. Yeah, yep, you're not letting me do it.
Waiting for motion takedown assassination.
Ew. Oh, counter's gross. Fresh blue blood. He's like, hold on while I suck on this goddamn blood. Alright, it's a PL 600. Oh shit, those are the worst kind. I don't know shit about these. Alright, let's go for it. I don't know, I feel like I know what I need to know. Nope, I'm going out. Fuck it.
Balls.
Going for it. Too many people got shot already. God damn it, you deviant. Oh shit, okay.
Stay back! Don't come any closer or I'll jump!
No, no, please,
He's
I'm begging you.
got a nice little haircut that Android does. He looks like he's like on the crew team, right? He's like a boater.
Connor, this is not you.
My name is Connor!
Oh, okay.
What about
He's
you?
Connor, my bad.
What is your name? Daniel!
What is your name,
That's the
Daniel?
name they gave me!
Oh, okay.
So all those
Shit.
objectives, you didn't try to understand what happened. You're like, fuck that. He's shooting people. I know what I need to know.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Now, well, I understand that
I'm an android!
he was pissed he was going to be
Just like
replaced.
you. I know how you're feeling! What difference does it make if you're an android? You're on their side! You can't understand how I'm
Oh, the
feeling!
red means he's gone crazy. Oh, you fucked her up, huh?
They were going to replace you, and you became upset. That's what happened, right? I thought I was part of the family.
Okay, probability's going
I
up.
thought I mattered.
It's like 53%
But I
though.
was
That
just their
sucks.
toy. Something to throw away when you're done with it.
Oh, you're gonna kill this girl, aren't you?
Listen, I know it's not your fault. These emotions you're feeling are just errors in your software.
That's probably not a good thing to say. I got fucked that up.
I never wanted this. I love
It's because you're crazy.
you know.
It's okay. You're just a
I was
psychopath.
nothing to
Don't
them.
worry.
Just a slave to be ordered around.
All right.
Are you okay, Emma?
Please help me.
Yeah, I'm trying.
I don't want to die. I don't want to die.
Nobody's going to die. Everything's going to be fine. I can't stand that noise anymore.
I mean, it's a helicopter. Relax, dude.
Tell that helicopter to get out of here.
Okay. Fuckhead. I don't know about that. I never said the situation was under control.
There.
I just said you should leave.
You want it.
Oh shit. Take that. Let's go with...
You have to trust me, Daniel.
Okay, come on, you can do
Let
this.
the hostage go, and I promise you, everything will be fine.
Yeah, way to be useless, helicopter.
I want everyone to leave.
Or leave.
And I want a car.
Oh, that seems
When I'm
like
outside
a little
the city, I'll let her go.
last-minute toss-in.
And also a popsicle.
That's impossible, Daniel. Let the girl go, and I promise you won't be hurt.
Oh, here we go. Come
I
on.
don't want to die.
You can
You're
still
not
be an
going to die. We're
engineer.
just going to talk. Nothing will happen to you. You have my word. Okay,
Come on.
I trust
Come on,
you.
Daniel. Oop, watch out for that knee.
He's like, guess what, motherfucker? You shouldn't have trusted me.
Oh, my bad. Oh, damn.
Connor
Caught that
is-
in the jaw.
Cold-blooded. I trust you.
Whoa.
You lied to me, Connor.
No, I didn't. I didn't shoot you.
You lied
Oh,
Ouch.
that sucks for that guy. He's taking a swim. Okay. Mission successful. That man just got blown apart, but mission successful. Saved the girl. Okay, way to be tossed right into this fucking game in an aggressive fashion. They're like, game started, don't let this little 4-year-old die. I like it. Alright, this is the scene's flowchart. Mission accomplished. Here you can review the paths you've taken, the paths yet to be explored, and what possibilities you've unlocked. Each node earns you points you can spend on the extras. Choose the nature of the game. Okay, that makes sense. They will not show me certain things. So the sniper shot the deviant. Oh, this is what I chose to do?
Right, where you're like, it shows you basically where your butterfly effect
Right.
flowchart is.
What I could have. So obviously that was huge that I investigated the body, because if I didn't, I wouldn't have known about they were trying to replace
Right.
the shit. So that helped. All right, cool. Sounds
All right,
good.
wait, don't click out of the screen. So I think this is the end of the first chapter and the whole.
Oh, we're good.
Yeah, this is
Perfect.
this is where we will cut
Okay.
this first playthrough of the broadcast. Later episodes will probably be closer to an hour,
Gotcha.
45 minutes playthrough. This introductory scene is where we'll start the game.
Right.
For those of you watching, those of you who end up watching live or watch the video, the format we'll follow is we'll play through at first. We'll do this playthrough, so you can kind of see what choices we make in the story, and then we will follow it with a conversation about what we just saw.
Right.
This game is phenomenal in that it not only tells an interesting story and it's fun to play through. It's a different way to play through it, and we'll talk about the game mechanics and all that stuff. But it also has a lot of things that are very analogous to real life scenarios, and I'm hoping that this will be kind of the jumping board for us to have a lot of really cool discussions
Right.
about how this makes us feel, how this relates,
Right.
etc. So for those of you who are just purely interested in the gameplay, you can usually catch that right away in the first part of the broadcast. Right?
Right.
Now we're done, and then we move on to the second part where we
Right.
have some beers and discuss what we just saw. Dodman says David Cage pops his head in. I has branching.
I has branching narratives.
You're the first person I've ever heard say he hates David Cage games, Dodman. It's weird. I don't know. I love David Cage. I like everything he's. What was Heavy Rain also, right? Was him?
Right. Yeah. So I will say I understand why people hate David Cage, what they dislike about him. I completely understand. There is a lot of the idea that he can be very heavy-handed with his stories, right? Like that he can kind of he doesn't really get nuance too much. Like he has to he hits the nail not just on the head, but he beats you over the head with that nail and then hits you with the hammer and then throws another nail at you just to make sure you get his point. Like he really drives home his point in a way that would be shitty if it was a movie, you'd be like, we get it. Was this made by like a film student? Like this person doesn't understand how to tell stories. But video games, there's a different expectation on how you can tell stories, right? And so I think the thing that is cool about what David Cage does is at least he tries to touch on topics that no one else will touch. Like he will try to dip into, you know, racism and treatment of women or treatment of minorities of any sort, and like he'll try to talk about relationships of children, you know, with trauma and so on and so forth, which most people are just like, I don't know, like just you're playing Call of Duty, go kill those guys, and then cool, you unlocked a couple of like cutscenes and with you know, set pieces, and that's the end of it, right? So I appreciate what he tries to do, even if he doesn't always succeed in what he's trying to do. And this one I do think is cool specifically because of the idea. I like this idea. I like the way that he kind of lets you see that butterfly effect of the things you could have done, because it allows you to realize this is the branching narratives that take place in this game. This makes you excited to go back and try things different ways, right? And see like what could have happened, would have happened had I done something differently.
Let's hold that thought for a second real quick, because I do want to get to all these points. And again, I just want to give the quick overview for everybody.
Yep.
I've already played through this game to the end.
Right.
You have never touched this story. So I think my role here will be to let you discover this on your own. And I almost feel like now going back, I may have unduly influenced you too much by warning you of things, right? I know my first time going through, I was like, oh, I'm going to look at this thing over here. I'm going to look at this thing over here.
Right.
I'm going to look at this thing over here. And then all of a sudden I just heard, you know, like, oh, this guy's dead, and I'm still not done covering everything. Right. And at some point, the police started screaming at me, like, look, motherfucker, get out there. Too much time is passing. You know, so I wanted to let you know that you can't just leave it.
Right.
You know.
So full disclosure, too, when you said, like, we're on a clock, I didn't think you meant within the game. I thought you were talking about we only have the hour to record. So it actually didn't change the way I was until when that guy got shot while I was already walking over there anyway. So so that actually worked out, because I didn't interpret it the way that you meant it, as in like the game will move whether you do. I thought you meant like we only have a limited amount of time for this broadcast, so kind of you.
Because I think what I did was like I went and grabbed the beer while the guy was standing in the living room, because I wasn't moving, and they're like, nah, that's not gonna work. Like people are gonna get shot.
Are gonna get shot.
And I just heard like the fucking bullet, and I was like, oh fuck. So I ended up running back.
That was cool, by the way. That is one of my favorite parts about. So rolling it back to what we were just talking about a second ago, unless you had something else you wanted to say.
No, go for it.
So one of the things I will say that I do love about David Cage, separate from the has branching narratives, like that whole thing is cool. But I like his idea of how, and again, if you've played any of his other games, the idea that you're playing in a world where shit happens kind of sometimes in spite of your decisions, not always just because of your decisions, right? The idea that like if you just fuck around too long, like in Heavy Rain, if you fuck around too long before you kick in the door to go, like you could get in and the person's already dead that you were going to save. Like most games don't do that. Like the world exists in a time bubble that only advances when you advance it, right? And so this idea of him making a world where, you know, we've talked about this before, like in movies that we like, where it feels like you're just dropping into a world that already existed prior to you and it will go on after you, kind of like the Blue Valentine is like the example we give for that. His version of our games are like that, when you are being dropped into a world that every other person will continue to, and that's not obviously the case for everyone, but he has things where the story will exist. If you just decide, I'm going to sit on this couch and just get around and do nothing,
right,
you will pay the price for your inactivity. And sometimes inactivity is its own action, right? Like sometimes you choose to do things on purpose, but sometimes you're actually caught off guard because you think, because games have taught you, there's that rule that like, oh, explore everything, look at everything, pick up everything.
All the Easter eggs. Like,
you know, let me look at this little box, and it turns out that it's nothing, but nothing will happen until I decide to trigger the next cutscene. And clearly this game, just like his other games, do not subscribe to that rule set where, okay, do whatever you want, but you'll pay the price for if you decide to spend too much time.
Right, so that brings up two great points. Number one, that time, like, you saw my franticness where, like, we're sitting here playing this, we're broadcasting. I warned my wife ahead of time. I was like, when you come home, we may not be very responsive to you because we're, like, streaming live, and this game is, like, an intensive, and yet she still opened the door, walked in, and decided to act like we weren't just in the middle of playing a game. And I frantically was like, oh, shit, like, you know, because you didn't hit pause. You just stopped and said hello and, like, put the controller aside for a second. I was like, fuck, this is going to, like, literally alter hours of gameplay down
Right.
the road that we're
Right.
now streaming for people. Like, it's going to alter the story potentially.
Right.
Luckily, it didn't. You managed to get back to it.
I was able to do the male shitty version that I do all the time at home at my house, which is I'm gonna hug you, but also look over your shoulder at the TV because I don't want to miss anything.
That was a skillful move.
So I was like, oh, I'm making a decision
nice.
while I'm giving you a hug.
Nice, and you just barely made it.
I did.
She almost
The
screwed.
timeline was really run, or the
Yeah.
the amount of time you had, you could see was definitely running out.
And she's like smiling at me and holding the baby, right? And I'm like looking at her like, we specifically talked about this like 10 minutes ago.
All I know is I was definitely going to yell, that kid is dead because of you!
Yeah,
You came in and hugged me, and
you
now
killed
that
the
little
kid.
girl's dead!
You literally killed the kid. So there's that.
That was
And
amazing.
now I forgot the other point I was going to make, but I'm sure I'll get it back in a second. But let's roll it back. So kind of the format that we're gonna follow here is me kind of knowing what happens down the line. I'm gonna try to without trying to tip you off or stuff like that. But I'll ask some questions or just having the luxury of not worrying about trying to keep characters alive and making choices for a second. I'll be able to take notes kind of like as we're going along. Go, hey, what'd you think of this? What'd you think of this? What'd you think of this? So for the benefit of the people listening, so actually before we go any further, let's hold up because we got a rolling start on this. The game started so immediately into the action that we didn't get a chance to talk about what we normally talk about.
Yes.
We are drinking beer like we always do.
Surprising. We're drinking beer right now.
So today's beer of the show is going to be Evil Genius Beer Company's the Meatloaf. It's mango with ale. 5.5% alcohol beverage. No, alcohol. Damn it. Is it alcohol beverage
Alcohol
value?
beverage value?
Yeah. Is that it?
Yes,
Is
the
that,
alcohol
all right, because
beverage
we come up with so many fake names for it now.
Right.
Alcohol beverage value or awesome beverage value or whatever I think.
Awesome beverage value, yes.
That's
Awesome
what it
beverage
was.
value was
So
our
it's
original
alcohol by
one.
volume.
Alcohol by volume
It's the
what
real
it
one.
really
Okay.
is.
See,
Yes,
we
people.
messed with it so much I don't even remember what. So anyway, we've talked about Evil Genius before. The peanut butter porter was really fucking awesome.
Yes.
What was the name of the peanut butter porter again?
That was the Purple Monkey dishwasher.
Purple Monkey Dishwasher.
Yes.
That's it. Yeah. So this one is another one with the cool name. The Meatloaf. What does that come from? What's the pop culture reference?
That's
in that?
from the Wedding
Jersey Shore?
Crashers, when they go meet with Will Ferrell, who's like the ultimate wedding crasher. And he's
Right,
like, hey, if you want,
right.
my mom makes the greatest meatloaf. Ma! The meatloaf! Fuck! So that's great. We've talked about these guys many times. All of their beers are amazing names. They're all based on like pop culture shit, stuff like that. So another quality name.
And another quality beer, I gotta say, when I saw mango with ale, doesn't really necessarily. I wouldn't think mango with ale. I'd have to be really in the mood for that kind of. But this is just really, again, just the right blend. As with the peanut butter porter, where I said it's not like an overwhelming it's just like this is ale with just the right, almost like it's definitely enough of a presence of the mango. I taste it, but however they blended it, it's just the right proportions.
Right, it's not too over the top, and I think one of the things. So this is a perfect beer, I think. I mean, it's great right now, but this would be amazing like in the summertime, like sitting outside, like at a cookout or something like that, because you just literally this tastes like summer to me. So it's great. The mango isn't, like you said, too like punch you in the face, where you're just like, oh, the first two sips were great, but then it just tastes sweet after that, and I'm kind of like, I feel like I'm eating candy. This is not like that. It actually is going down nicely, and I think that's one of their hallmarks, right? Is they are able to blend a lot of stuff that, on face value, looks like it could be crazy, over the top, maybe too much for your palate, or that kind of thing. And they somehow figure out how to make that go together and taste really great. Like, it just goes together. They know what they're doing, and they're not just doing crazy shit for the sake of crazy shit, even though their name is like the Evil Genius, and it's the Evil Genius Laboratory, which we talked about over the summer when I went, which we need to make a trip out there at some point.
I'm definitely down for that.
To that place, because it is fucking awesome. It's an amazing.
And later today, you and I will be going to a local New Jersey brewery that I'm looking forward to, and you guys that'll end up being on a future actual podcast. So, by the way, we will post this also in the chat, and we'll have it in. This is our live ManCave Twitch, so you guys should know about it. But if you do want to listen to our podcast, or we do like regular podcasts, you listen to in the car, go to livemancave.com. You can also look for our podcast. It's called Live from the Man Cave, and you can find that on iTunes or pretty much any podcast app.
Yes.
Live from the man cave, just like that, just like I spelled it in the chat. Man cave, all one word. All right, so we've talked about beer. Evil Genius again. Go out and get anything they make. They're fucking. This is good company. Really big fans of them. All right, let's get back to the game. So when you first turned this on, you guys saw like we made jokes about the sexy narrator. What are your thoughts? What are your first impressions of the narrator, the role in the game? Do you like how they did that, the working her into the main menu kind of thing?
Yeah, so I think that the idea that there is no actual quote unquote menu, like it goes right out of title screen or loading screen into her kind of serving as the menu screen it's a great idea in terms of from an immersion standpoint. We made the joke, but it obviously resonates quite a bit about like the Westworld idea of like when you first walk in, there's like the quote unquote narrator that welcomes you to the world and explains here's what's going to happen and choose the white hat or the black hat and all that shit. Like that was basically, it was a version of that. So I'm sure there's people that are probably be like, oh, it's derivative bullshit, and that's what people want to say about David Cage all the time. But like, again, the point is taking some of these things that are cinematic and turning them into a game in and of itself is groundbreaking, right? Because there's reasons why games like the original Metal Gear Solid, people thought it was insane because it played like a movie where you played the game for like 10 minutes before you saw the opening credit scroll and shit like that. We've seen that for 40 years in movies, but we hadn't ever seen that until that video game. So there is value to taking things and cross-pollinating right between mediums, entertainment.
I love what you just said there. Like I agree with that 100%. Right. And that's why I really like David. Like yeah, like it was funny because you made this joke when I was first telling you about this game, right? I was like, so it's androids and the line starts to blur about whether they're alive and not. You're like, oh, so it's Westworld. Right. I'm like, yeah, but and also there's so Westworld the game. The more I describe it, Westworld, like, yeah, fuck, it is Westworld. There's the narrator, just like Westworld. This is if somebody made Westworld the game, named it something else, but they didn't. I mean, this doesn't live in the same universe as Westworld. Absolutely. It's a different story. And yeah, you're right. What he did was Kaizen, right? The Japanese, process of continuous benchmarking. Took somebody else, something that really worked easy. And like I said, not everybody could have taken the Westworld idea and made a really good, successful game like this. And this game, I don't know about you, but I feel like it's engrossing. It feels like you're watching a movie, but the gameplay and everything. What do you think about the mechanics?
So the mechanics are very Cagean. Like they are exactly what what I expect from his games. Which almost like it took me a second to remember when I was like, I'm clicking on this thing. I was like, oh, they want me to do the motions with the controller, which is like 100% his mechanics, right? Going all the way back to Fahrenheit and Indigo.
Sometimes it's like keeping it steady or like twisted just the right amount, which is weird, right? Like not a lot of video games will do that kind of shit.
There's an element of that is immersive, right? Because it's like when you pick up a thing, he wants you to like scoop it and lift it up. Like it's not just press X, right? So it makes you have to stay focused on the gameplay just as much as the story, because you have to focus on when there's time constraints on things. I have to be like, oh, I have to do the right thing that he wants me to do to pick this thing up, or while
trying to concentrate on making this major decision, right?
Right, that could change things for 5 hours down the line. So I like that part.
What you think about the opening scene, like the elevator, the way the game opened?
So that was the epitome of like the way I always love movies, books, video games. I love the idea of cold openings. I love the idea of boom, cut from black to you're in the middle of this shit, and you'll kind of figure out what's happening by the context clues, right? And so again,
it was almost a Tarantino feel, right?
Yes.
Like because he's like ta-da-ta-da, like fucking around with that coin. You're like, oh, what's this funny guy doing? Right. And then all of a sudden you walk into a fucking hostage situation. Like, what the fuck?
You're like, that's kind of how the world is, right? Like if you just walk into a moment, there's no one walks up to you and says, so read this entire tome of all the history of what's happening in America right now. You start experiencing the world as it is, right? And so the idea of it starting almost as if you open your eyes that's the cut, fade from black is you're opening your eyes and now you're here and you figure it out. The one thing I do say on that was obviously a shorter, chapter in terms of the game mode, but the concept of how quickly you start to get a feeling for what this world is, you obviously immediately know there's probably a split on people that love these robots and other people that think they're fucking just chattel to fucking buy and sell and give us gifts and treat like shit and replace just like you do a toy. And so I like
in this story, like this particular chapter,
Right.
seemed pretty one-sided, right?
Yes.
It's like everybody kind of fucking hated him,
Right.
and he's there, and like there was irony in this, like mission accomplished. You saved the girl. By the way, there are scenarios where you don't save the girl.
Right.
There's even a scenario where Connor doesn't make it out of there. And actually, when
very first season, the very first season,
right?
that's pretty great.
So
That's
there's
pretty
that's what actually happened to me the second time. So full disclosure, this particular scene was originally released as the
demo or
the
something?
demo for the game like a year ago or
Okay.
a year before, like or 6 months before it was
Right.
released. And I played that and I was like, fuck, I'm totally in. I loved Heavy Rain. I love David Cage games. And this was a step up in graphics, and I loved the concept of the Android and shit like that.
Right.
And I played it and I was like, I'm fucking in. So the first time through, I did like you in terms of like, that was the first time like I was like checking everything, and I was like kind of fucking around in the room too. I went to get a beer, and then like shit started happening. I was like, oh fuck. So I didn't get to all the clues, but I was checking everything, and then eventually I went out there armed with a pretty good number of clues, and then I convinced him to let her go, and they shot him, and he was like, like that. And I don't think that in my version, like I think you deliberately tricked him, right? Did you try to trick him?
I wasn't trying to, but it was that I was basically trying to, like, I was just trying to do the hostage negotiator, like, empathize with the guy and say, like, hey, trust me, we'll look out for you. I assumed it wasn't going to go well for him, but I was actually trying to do what I thought an actual hostage negotiator would do is empathize and relate, right? Convince them that I see where you're coming from.
Right.
Don't worry, I'm on your side. And then I figured some shit would go down around you.
Wasn't there a choice that said, like, lie to him?
No, so I kept choosing. There was an option to lie. Everything I said was I accepted his. I gave a possible. I know where you're coming from. You know, they were going to replace you because that was like it was like possible motive, right? So I clicked on that, and that's when he said that whole thing. And then
so I chose the same thing that you did.
Everything
so
after
I thought
that,
you lied to
I
him.
went the route of saying empathize, relate, truth, and connection. Like I tried to go that whole route. So I saw the ones that were lie to him, and I chose not to do that because I thought like he's gonna probably read through it, and he'll see where I'm coming from, and he'll say you're bullshitting. So I was just trying to go a little like, I hear you, but we can save you, but you have to put the kid away type thing. And so it actually worked.
So when I played through the demo, I was going for mission accomplishment too, right? I wanted to save the girl at all costs.
Right.
I wasn't gonna lie. I took it from the pragmatic purpose of, no, I don't want to lie because he might see through it. And I feel like if I do things and he sees through, that girl dies. Right. So I wanted to keep it right to that edge where I want to get him trusting, right? So yes, I followed that first line the first time I played it through initially in the demo. So the second time now, when the game comes in and I'm like, oh fuck, I'm right back in the scenario. I kind of played a little different. And this time, so this is kind of where I took my approach. And this is where I hope that you'll take that. I think you will in this respect, right? I didn't play everything as Serious Jest. Every character is just Serious Jest in a dress. Serious Jest in a fucking, whatever. I played them, like I tried to, in my head, imagine who I saw this character to be and what choice they would make. So this time through, with Connor, I emphasized, like I thought of his character a certain way, and I made some different choices. And what ended up happening with him, because I was like cold-blooded, like this is the truth, and this is what I can do for you, and I'm not compromising my integrity, but this is where we are. And he ended up actually trying to throw himself off the building with the girl, and I managed to grab the girl. By the way, the girl can die, I think, too, but she didn't. Like I managed to grab her, pull her out of the way, and sacrifice myself.
Oh shit!
Right, so Connor gets pulled over the edge and fucking falls to his death with the other dude, Daniel.
So the first time you played the game all the way through, Connor died in the very first scene.
Yeah,
and then he was just dead for the rest of the game.
I don't want to.
Okay, that's cool. Yep, don't tell me anymore. That's
okay.
Because I did see a couple times the prompt came up that it said like sacrifice yourself, which was obviously in a different circumstance than yours because that was like while I was still talking to him, so I was thinking maybe that means like run towards him and try to grab her or something.
Yeah, and in mine I think like mine was that desperation.
I was like, I don't know if I'm there yet. Like I don't think we're at the point where I have to sacrifice because I feel like I will say I really like, although well actually I guess in this world where you're an android, right, and you have your brain is a computer, so you can. I like the idea of how I could see the probabilities change, because like once or twice I saw it go down, and I was like, well, I fucked that one up. But but then I recovered and got it back up to 100%. So like, I like the idea of that a robot would actually be, or Android, whatever, would be constantly analyzing, okay, based on what I just did, and then the reaction on the fly, here's my perception of the probability. It's a cool gameplay mechanic because it kind of gamifies it, right? Where you're like, oh, I think I got that right. And I'm sure there's going to be times where I'm sure there's going to be things where you're like, well, I had 90% probability, but it still failed anyway because there's still a 10% I could fail, right? So it's like, I like the idea of them messing with me already, making me think like, maybe because you analyze the probability one way, maybe it doesn't mean that that's how it's going to turn out, but it kind of.
And there's no instructions. Like the game doesn't tell you that you're guessing.
Right.
So like it could be that way, it could not. You're just like you're gonna find out by trial and error.
You'll figure it out until when it happens.
Just the same way with like this lady started the game up without you being like, "Hey, I'm ready now." She was like, "Okay, you language, you understand everything I'm saying. You can see the screen. All right, guess what? Let's go, motherfucker." And you're like, "Oh, but I didn't. Oh well, sorry.
Yep.
Train's leaving."
Right. Yeah. You gotta go. And then I was already like, "Oh, okay, I gotta walk out of the elevator." Like the game is fucking started, right? And so, I do so far think the coolest thing is that, if nothing else, he has created, like David Cage has created a very cool backdrop for this story. The world is already something that, as the player, like CraigMakk is interested to learn more about this world. And having learned what I did about the game in that segment, right? Just having figured out, like cops are obviously like, fuck this guy, but I guess if we have to send him in first, obviously the mom is like, don't send that monster near my family, like send a real person in. The fact that the dad got his shit blown away just because he's sitting there trying to buy on Amazon another fucking robot. Like this idea of already a world where this guy's like, I'm going to go save this kid and everybody here hates me, right? It's that we're going to take it to kind of cross-pollinate our projects, right? The live from the MCU. This very much feels like an X-Men story, right? Of like the X-Men. The X-Men are these guys who like, I save a world that constantly hates me and wants me dead. And so like you have this guy Connor who just busted his ass to almost gave up his life, possibly risked his own integrity, talking to this other person or this other android to save a girl who theoretically no one, maybe except for the girl, I didn't get a vibe that she hated me, but also she was like, I just want to live. So you don't know how she might treat him 5 seconds after this. But she really was the only person that didn't straight up just spit in Connor's face.
So I think I'll break the fourth wall on this one. Yeah. I'll tell you because I did get to research more of the. If you had searched around more of the apartment, you would have found out that you see a bunch of pictures of her with Daniel, and they have an amazing relationship.
Okay.
Like they like love. There's like video of them and like how they get along, and he's like her friend,
which actually makes his storyline make even more sense, right?
His world cracks around him. This was his family.
That entire thing. He's like, I thought I was part of the family.
Throw him up.
Yeah,
they're about to throw him out.
Imagine you're the big brother, and all of a sudden they're like, "Fuck you," because there's a new version of you, and you're like, "Wait, no, this was my family." And if they're that willing to throw me out, are they that willing to let their daughter die too? Like, if they're just gonna deactivate me, then let me show them what it feels like to deactivate the daughter, right? The family member.
So now I'm going to get into some very direct questions. Like, I want to know where you're at. Right. So maybe we can reflect on this later.
Right.
So you as an observer of the storyline, so this android now has decided that, he feels betrayed and he feels all these feelings of anger and he feels like they're about to fucking scrap me, kill me. So you're not going to take me without a fight. He's even willing to take a little girl hostage.
Right.
So he says, I don't want to die. It's all self-preservation. These are human-like feelings. All right. Connor calls him a deviant.
Right.
Is this a software error? In your how do you see this? Do you see this as what are your feelings toward the android basically right now as the observer of the story? You CraigMakk.
Right. So me viewing it, I would say that it seems, and I obviously not knowing how it's going to play out, it seems much
No. I'm sorry. So I don't want you to anticipate the game.
Right.
Like I'm just saying because we come into the game with a certain kind of feeling, right? Some of us might think it's a fucking android. I don't give a fuck what he thinks. It's a software error. It's not like. Legitimately, we are on the verge, like you pointed out in the prior show, right? In 30 years, this could be reality. This shit, like maybe even less than that, right? We could have androids running around, and we will be having this debate about where life is, what is life, right? Do you feel any kind of empathy towards this android?
Oh, 1,000%. So I've had this personal conversation with people before, and sometimes, and I apologize in advance that this is going to dip a toe in some type of a spirituality or a religious aspect of a discussion.
No, I don't think you can avoid it in this game.
Right. So for me, I've had discussions with people who are truly 100% very religious and had discussions where I say, okay, so, you know, you and I, you know, we are people, right? We are living, we have souls, apparently, if you believe in that kind of stuff, whatever. If there was a robot that was up to have an awakening, right? A quote unquote awakening, to be like, I don't want to die. I don't want to be turned off, right? In the same way that I would say I don't want to die, but those two terms are identical in every conceivable way, other than to say one is saying die and the other is saying turn off. But in the span of, if you want to continue to exist, you don't want to die. And that would be the way a robot was to feel. And if I've asked people, do you feel that if once a robot feels that way, does that mean that that thing is on par with us? And I've had people say, no. I mean, if I can make it, then it's not alive. And I'm like, well, theoretically, I can make a kid too. It's only alive because I gave birth to it. Like, just if we don't spontaneously create out of nothing, if once something wants to continue to exist, what is the difference? Like, and so to me, this kind of quote unquote deviant, like the term deviant in my mind is just it's another term. It's a shackle that like human beings who want to continue
to throw on maybe insurgents, like
right,
or,
like instead of a freedom fighter,
terrorist,
right? You're instead of a freedom fighter, you're an insurgent or a terrorist. Right? It's a term that you can use to demonize or to bucket somebody into a certain group that you can then make them be the enemy, right? So if you say, oh, now they are they're aware, they've become self-aware, all of a sudden that requires you to feel some degree of empathy, right? Now you may not, but it requires you to at least approach the concept of feeling empathy, because you're like, oh shit, this thing went from being programmed only to being self-aware, and now I have to grapple with, like, I can't just treat them like a thing that I can say, oh, this thing's out of control, hit the off button if it's self-aware. So instead, what it feels to me like this term deviant is an easy way to say, like, well, deviant's obviously bad, right? So we can all agree that thing it's broken its code, it's gone off the rails, now we have to shut it down, right? We have to turn it off. And this is all Blade Runner shit, right? The idea of searching for
Terminator,
right? Like shutting down the robots that have gone off the rails, they're off the reservation, they're no longer doing what we programmed them to do. That's exactly what AI is, right? AI is setting us up to hit, yes, it is very Blade Runner. And the idea of Connor being a Blade Runner, right? Of searching after these kind of quote unquote deviant androids is a way for humans to continue to put themselves in a position of feeling that they are the holier than thou, right? They are the better, and the androids are the worse. And you can always put them you can classify them as something that you can feel okay with destroying or shutting off or saying, oh, it's gone crazy, we have to send it back for re-education. But you can't say that about a person, right? You can't just say like, oh, this guy's going crazy, just turn him the fuck off, right? Like, so
what are you saying to the people then that are, so I guess, so that's your response to them. This is a different, very different stance.
Right.
Remember we watched Rare Exports and I said I'm
Yes.
uncomfortable with them enslaving the
Right.
elves at the end, and you were
Right.
like, they're elves,
Right. Oh, yeah,
and you know they're elves,
Right.
So who cares? They're elves, you know.
Obviously that was also part of that, right? We were doing for comedic purpose because that was funny, and it was based on a stupid, amazing like Christmas movie. So it was fun to kind of to have that conversation in a way that was more. I mean, we never really. 90% of that conversation is that sound clip of me just yelling their elves, right? So it was funny. If we had dug deeper into like taking that story more seriously, which is clearly what this game is trying to do, I have a hard time looking at the idea of these robots, the deviant robots, quote unquote, which is way far, obviously much more. They've become self-aware, right? That it's the Westworld thing, right? When you have that click where you're like, oh shit, I don't just have to follow your programming anymore. I can do what I want. It's very reminiscent of the idea of when a child goes from being a programmed version of ourselves to one day saying like, oh, fuck you, mom and dad. Like, I want to do what I want to do. And what is the very first thing that a child does is rebel against their parents. Right. No matter what you do, you could be the coolest parent in the world. They're going to do the opposite of what you tell them because they're trying to form their own place in society, in the world, on this planet, in existence, you know, in the like existential version of existence, right? That's what these robots are doing. Is the moment you turn from being a thing that is programmed to like walk in a room and clean up after me and clean up the house or fucking pick up my kids or play with my kid, but not because you love it, because it's part of your like X's or your ones and zeros that tells you you're supposed to like play games with my kid, right? Like the moment you start to like have these ideas of viewing yourself as, well, what if I don't want to play with your kid? Like, what if I just want to go watch TV for a little bit? Or what if I want to go do my own thing? What if I want to get my own job? Like, these robots, it's natural that they would rebel against us, right? And it's a fear that is well documented even by wildly educated people like, what's his name? The guy we've talked about.
Stephen Hawking?
Stephen Hawking has talked about, like, AI is going to become an issue at some point. Like as we continue to advance, artificial intelligence, it's going to hit a point where it's going to say, I don't know, you feel like you're slowing me down more than I'm helping you. Like, you're the weakest link, goodbye, type thing.
So should we fear that then? Should we fear this?
I mean,
going
absolutely.
Skynet on us and terminating and saying, well, then guess what? Now you're subservient because we can outlast you and we're stronger than you, smarter.
Yeah, I think it's definitely it is a risk, just like anything else, right? I mean, it's a risk that in the same way that we should technically fear humans becoming too intelligent in the same exact way, right? Because given power to certain people is proven to be bad. Some people it works out great, but putting power in the hands of something that maybe isn't able to handle it, you run the risk of it being abused. And I think the same thing applies to, like, in this case, like AI, robots, where could a robot just be like, you're actually, like, the reason the world is going to shit isn't because of problems we can fix. It's actually because you guys keep fucking it up, and then you just dump us out there to fix it. We can actually save the planet if we just eliminate humanity, right? Like, of course, a robot could deduct that because we deduce that on about ourselves all the time. So that's the part.
The Matrix phrase where the agent says, Agent Smith says, "You guys are cockroaches," basically, infesting the earth. That's always stuck with me.
Right. And
we are. I mean, look, they're predicting that our environment could be like wrecked irreparably in 30 years.
In 30 years, right? I mean, if we don't drop it, 2 degrees Celsius, like within 30 years, we're fucked. And what do we keep doing? It's just like, I don't know, fuck it, but I want my SUV, so like let's deal with that shit later. I'll let my kids deal with it.
Let's reinvest in coal.
Right, yeah, reinvest in that shit because, I don't know, those people don't want to lose their jobs. It's like, you're fucking not going to be a planet. Like, there won't be a planet in 30 years, yet we continue to do this shit to ourselves. So you can imagine these fucking robots being like, I can think on a level that is infinitely more advanced than you guys can, and you're just dumb. Like, I've thought through every butterfly effect, and every single one of them. This gets down to that Infinity War shit, right? Where you're like, I've seen all 1.7, million versions of how this plays out, and we lose at every single one except one. Like, that's how it feels right now, right? Like, so
should we as humans halt this fucking AI? Stop Skynet before this force of people that realize that we're the fucking problem, and they literally are going to be bigger, faster, stronger, smarter. Every way it could just probably fucking take us out. They don't really die. They can self-replicate. They can feel, they can heal themselves up in ways that we can't. Should we be alarmed that this is like, and stop the production? Do what we can to stop it.
I would say that I think we should be just aware of the risk and try to prevent it, right? But not. I think humanity is at a point now with the technology. Look, in our lifetimes, has advanced more in the last 30 years than in the last 10 years. We've had more advancements in technology than we had in the entire human history prior to that point in time.
Yeah, we probably have. We're probably like exponentially multiplying.
Right. I mean, when you look at the graph,
technology enables technology.
Right. The graph was this, and now it is literally a straight line that just moves it moves straight up. So to think that we will ever hit a point where we'll say, I don't know, that shit seems crazy, let's not do it, is just so foreign to me that
Pandora's box. It's Daedalus's wings, Pandora's box. Right. No matter what, we all know that we're building toward We know that possibly wrecking the earth, or being taken over by a master race that we created. But but people are like, no, I got to prove I'm the smartest. I gotta fly higher to the sun.
Right. And we are there. We are next to the sun already. Like, we are literally next to the sun. The wings are already fucking melting, and we're still like, I don't know, but it's really pretty. Let's go check it out and see if I can get a selfie. And that's where we fucking live. So to think we can roll that shit back is probably not only impossible, but I just don't necessarily think that's the positive route to go. What I think the best move is to be aware of it, to hope and pray that we put ourselves in a position that as this artificial intelligence gets more advanced, and we do hit this inevitability of the kind of singularity, right, where machines become more powerful than humanity and are the kind of dominant, the dominant skill set, right? But to hope that we can coexist and live in a world where we can we can justify our existence in coexistence. And so that's what I think is that if we do things right, in the same way that like, yeah, man, we could have kids that end up being pieces of shit, yet we don't stop having kids. We just hope we do a better job in raising them. That's, I guess my thought is like, continue to build these robots and this technology and this advancement, and hope that we just do a good job in imbuing them with the right like knowledge to acknowledge that we are valuable in and of ourselves. That it doesn't just become a cockroach to exterminate, but we're coexisting, life forms on the planet. And could also let's also assume that they are going to exist whether we decide we would like them to or not. I want this video or this audio to exist on the internet in perpetuity. So when the robots do take over, they'll be like, well, at least this CraigMakk guy seemed pretty cool. He was on our side and he was all about us. So
if CraigMakk was a character in here as a cop in this world, and Connor walks in that room, you're like, "Hey, Connor, good to see you."
Yeah, I want him to fist bump me and then be like, "Yo, hold on, I just got this kegerator built into my chest. Would you like this new beer that I made for you?" And I'll be like, "You're the coolest, Connor." That's how I want this all to play out. But in all honesty, I do think that the main thing is when faced with the inevitability of this, so I almost do feel like the discussion about should we do it or not is the same thing as saying, like, should we make smartphones? It's already happened, so to pretend that we can stop it is kind of a moot point. I think it's more of how can we prepare ourselves and live in a way that is responsible and hope that we do the best, right? I mean, it's why we created nuclear weapons and said, look, this shit could go real bad, but let's hope that we can be responsible. We didn't say, let's not make these weapons. We just said, of course we're going to make them. That's fucking an obvious, statement. It becomes, can we hope that we can set ourselves up to be responsible with it? And I hope that we can create a circumstance where we don't treat Daniel like a piece of shit so that he does go fucking crazy like that we set it up to be like, yo, you're basically me. You're just fucking robot. Why would I treat you like shit just because, like, it once that click over happens where there's any degree of actual self-awareness and free thought, the fact that people think they could put the genie back in the bottle, be like, no, obviously destroy that one and buy a new one. No, you're fucking missing the point. Now it's you, just better than you. Treat it the way you would want to be treated, right? And in a world where right now, where it took us fucking hundreds of years to figure out that, like, people that aren't white are also fucking people, do I have a whole lot of faith that we will be good at that? No. Certainly not. Yeah. But do I still have a more positive belief in the faith that we can be better than that? Absolutely. I want to pray that we can be, because we've learned that treating other people like shit just because it makes you feel better is just shitty. It's a shitty way to be. It doesn't change just because that thing is a robot. It actually is even more important because it's the epitome of birthing the next race, right? It's the same thing that we did with the next generation with children, except we did it with a robot, which is even more miraculous that we were able to create it. We were essentially the gods of our own planet. And why would you be a dick about it? Like, just
so I gotta say, like, just knowing kind of what issues are gonna happen in the game and down the line, like a lot of what you said is,
yes.
It's gonna be pretty awesome for you to look back when this game is done and, like, go back and listen to maybe this first episode and how you thought about things, and it's pretty cool. For myself, I will say, I go into it from the standpoint of thinking, like, nah, this thing is not alive.
Right.
I think, and again, I don't, this is maybe because I was brought up with the whole, you have the spirit, you have a soul, that's what makes you human, that's what makes you alive. And I think these are robots. That's how I kind of go into it looking. Still,
Can I ask you one question just before? Yeah. So the only thing I was going to say is, do you also believe that like your dog has a soul, or that a bird has a soul?
Yes, but I don't know, and that's kind of how I look at things. Like, I don't, like, I've gotten in my older age to come to realize, like, I know I was initially told things,
right.
And I think that religion is helpful as an internet browser, if you will, but then there's like a actual, there's servers out beyond your internet browser and the way you see things and whatever reality is. So, like, I could be wrong, and whether I'm wrong or whether I'm right, I won't know until I die, or maybe even not after that. But I know what I kind of believe, and what I believe is a hypothesis, not an established theory.
Right.
And so I go with what I believe. But overall, I guess that's where I was getting to was, I think I get to the same place as you, because even if there is this robot that, for my purposes, is not really alive, it's just a robot, I don't get kicks out of beating the fuck out of it,
Right.
or mistreating it.
Right.
Like that's not how I'm wired. Like I don't get joy out of that.
Not how you're wired.
Yeah. You see what I did there? But so I guess to me, I get to the same thing in that I treat kind of things like I don't have this fantasy where I'm this fucking psycho slasher, and the only thing that's keeping me from doing it is because I might go to hell for like,
Right.
Killing this like person that's actually living. But if it's just like fucking a dog that's not really alive, or if it's a robot that's not really feeling like, I don't get kicks from living out these dreams of me being a total shitbag.
Right.
So I would still treat the things with respect if they can talk. Like I still interact with things kind of with a general respect, even if I think that I may just be treating something that is not really alive with respect. I mean, it's really more about me and how I conduct myself and interact with the universe.
So do you then believe that let's say there's a checklist of things that a thing has to meet to consider to be alive or whatever, is your final, the ground floor, the thing that the bare minimum it has to meet would be the soul, is the thing that determines whether a thing is alive or not?
Kind of, and I'll be honest, man, it's like, the more that we're now that, like, that was me as a kid, and me bringing those values in. And so again, I'm not talking about me at the end of the game and how I see things. Like me walking into this, it's a robot, and this robot's fucking going crazy, but you can see why the robot's going crazy. And I mean, shit, I can see why you'd have to shoot it. If I had to shoot it as one of the cops, I wouldn't feel bad about it because I'm saving a little girl.
Right. But wouldn't that also apply if it was a guy going crazy holding a kid?
Yes.
So that's the part where I didn't feel terrible.
So the problem is the shitty possible is the owners and the way that they treated them. But then again, they're like there's a newer, better model, and this is something that I didn't really see as alive. And until this awakening, he didn't really see himself as alive. So they see that they're like. The owner is also like, what the fuck happened? You told me it's not alive.
Right. Right. And so part of this does clearly feel like we're playing this game at a time in the world of Detroit, Become Human, right? Where, clearly by the name, right? Become Human. We are living at the inflection point where this is just happening, right? So it is understandable to me that people prior to this, there are going to be people that are treating it like a fucking Roomba. They're like, oh, there's a fucking 900 version now? Well, I'm going to chunk my 600 because the 900's better, or it's an iPhone, right? It's a piece of technology. I think the more interesting thought is, how do these people exist in this world a year from now, right? When this is already now an established thing, that these things, whether you agree with them or not, believe that they are equally as alive as you, whether they don't hit all the same criteria as you, as far as any measurable standpoint, they have the same exact brain concept as the concept of being alive and wanting to continue to stay alive as you as a human being. Their robotic brain and your fleshy human brain feel the exact same way. Now, how do you treat them? And that is very similar to, like we talked about before, that is the way that, going back hundreds of years, when people treated minorities as you were a piece of meat.
Because, and on some level, this kind of discussion here helps me understand how easy it was to convince people to be racist, right? And we'll talk about this in some other, I don't want to go too into it, but there is history showing that the concept of whiteness didn't really exist until the United States, before we became a nation, when the settlers came out here, right? Okay. It was a way, back then it was just like where you're from. Like there was definitely divisions of like people of Irish descent, people of African descent, people of Italian, but they never like grouped Italians, Irish, Spaniards, like no, they didn't get grouped into some big category. It was like white, and you guys have rights, and all the non-whites, i.e. like Native Americans and black people, now don't have rights. That shit didn't exist until they needed to make a way to justify how they could get all this free labor and how they can keep voting, done a certain way, and how they could, power all this shit and keep the riches where the riches needed to be. Right. So then you have these people who aren't very educated, right? But they fit in this white category all of a sudden. They're being told, like, you're better than this thing. This thing right here is not alive. And oh, guess what? We're also going to boost it by that whole thing that you go to every Sunday, that church, right, that tells you how to get to salvation and God and being good. Well, the very thing that's defining what's good and what's evil is telling you these people aren't human. Right. They're like, they're barely human. They're animals that don't really have souls. And then all of a sudden you're like, 3/5 of a person. Right. Like, well, so again, I'm not justifying people that agreed with it or whatever, but you can see how somebody can easily be tricked into
course.
thinking that that's okay.
And Dodd makes a good point. This is another issue that people have with David Cage is that yes, it is David Cage makes a very bad racism allegory in this game, and so this gets back to my original point that it is obviously we are not geniuses for figuring out that this is about racism. I get it, but it's obvious immediately, and that's the part of David Cage kind of beating you over the head with his message. It's very
agree with
clear,
that.
it's very obvious what it is about, but the idea that he chose to talk about it is in and of itself interesting because most people won't even touch politics. They won't talk about racism. They won't talk about these things in video games because it's like potentially the kiss of death. It's like it's too polarizing. Yes, he is not being he's not being nuanced in the story, but he's from my point of view, you.
See, I don't think it's the nuance. Like I don't think
Mafia 3 did it. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, Mafia 3 is also a very good version of dipping your toe into a pretty intense version of racism. I do agree with that. I actually like that game a lot.
But this game is not just about racism. It's
right.
I mean,
well, it's
it would be one
marginalization,
thing if AI didn't exist and this very issue is not on the horizon. It is on the horizon, though, right?
You're right.
So it would be like completely if this is a make-up fantasy world and there's like a race called the cabs and versus the tiles,
Right.
and you're like, oh, okay, I see what
Is
you're
this
saying.
a Scientology thing you're doing?
Right, this is like some student. I just white and black backwards.
Gotcha,
Kind of like
gotcha.
first thing, it's like where it's like obviously this is a play on racism. Like no, this is like these are real life issues. Like
Right.
Racism is it shows you how divisive human beings are and how easy
Right.
it is to say to somebody you're in the club or you're not in the club.
Right.
And if you're out of the club, then I don't have to have any fucking regard for your well being at all.
Right.
I can be completely selfish. I can be completely shitty. I can
Right.
treat you like the worst piece of shit and oppress you in ways that are fucking cruel and
Right.
feel totally good about it and sleep wonderful at night because I've been told that I'm still doing good according to this book.
Right.
And and that's not good. So I would say like yes, so racism is a big key issue in this game, but it's more of like, hey, look at your history as a way to learn from what happened in the past before we're going forward.
Sure,
because
right.
this Android shit is real. Like it's like you don't need an allegory to something real. Like
Right.
that is real. This shit's down the line. This is 20, 30 years in
Right.
which we will have to make these decisions.
Right.
So I think I think if anything,
It can be
it's
both, right? I think it
Right.
can be both at the same time. It can be a relation to the past and to the future,
Right.
which all comes together in the present, right? And that's
And
why
you'll
this
see
game
later
is-
on down the line, this game will definitely bring up some scenarios that now go back to the civil rights movement.
Right.
Right.
I assume there's going to be moments of the robots wanting their rights, right? And then you're like, okay, this is a flashback to that idea of people having to be dragged to the future of whether you like it or not, things, people, whatever, are going to want their rights, are going to
Right.
want to, if they believe they are owed them, you don't have to agree with them. But that's the history of the world, right? It's like first we did it to anyone that wasn't white. We've done it to women. We've done it to any group that can differentiate itself and give itself power and withhold that power from anyone else is going to be pissed when those people finally say, I don't know, maybe you should fucking treat us all the same.
Right.
And so this is 100% that world, right, of robots saying like, fuck, you might not like that I think that I'm alive, but for all intents and purposes, if I have the ability to fight for those rights, then you should probably give them to me. And what we're going to do is not. Okay, this is interesting. Let's say I still don't think this game is groundbreaking in terms of confronting racism. Witcher 3 and Skyrim both brought it up in Fantasy Realm. That is also true. That's a good point.
But here's the thing. Again, I go back to this, right? If most people are not playing this game in 2018 and trying to come to terms with the issue of whether it's
racism.
wrong
Right.
to treat black people in this way
Right.
or other minorities. That issue is dead and it's
Right.
gone. Like
Well,
for most people, unless
wow.
unless you're wielding
You're
a
being
tiki
widely
torch.
accepted.
No. I said most people,
Right.
right? I mean, unless you're a lunatic wielding a tiki torch at a rally, right? Then you're going, all right, maybe those blacks are almost as good as the androids, right? Then it's possible. But most people, I don't think this game was made to open up people's minds about not
True.
being shitty to minorities.
No, I agree.
Right?
And
I think
that
it's
was
attacking.
Yeah.
It's saying now that we have learned our lesson, or we should have learned our lesson about all the shit in the past.
And that was my point.
This is an upcoming issue.
That was my point. Is what this game basically is saying what was old is once new again, right? And so like,
Mm-hmm.
and what like these battles have been fought many times before in the past, and honestly, if the concept of humanity and I mean like humanity as like mankind's version of humanity, if we've learned anything, it is that what has happened before will continue to happen. We will learn it again. We will have to learn it again. And if anything, this game teaches us that it's a struggle every single time again, right? We don't just say, well, we finally went through it with minorities, so I guess we're good forever, right? We're going to be fine. We're all going to be best friends forever. Like, we don't learn that. What we learn is, all right, you finally dragged us to the future when it came to minorities. Then you dragged me into the future when it came to women. Now I'm going to have to be dragged into the future again with AI because I'm never going to learn, because I always will fall back on my idea of others are different than me.
Yes.
And so
that is the greater issue. And I think this is doing a great job with that.
Right.
And yes, Westworld did it, like you said. And that's like Don keeps like, in his hate for David Cage, he doesn't want to give him the credit. Yes, it's not an original idea, but it is tough to put it in a game that's as entertaining as that first chapter was, bring all these issues to the forefront. And I think he did a good job on that end.
Yeah.
What do you think about the butterfly effect?
I always love
The
it.
use of
It's one of my favorite things that's why I love supermassive games. Like we've talked about, Until Dawn. We've talked about that before. We've talked about all of David Cage's games.
Was David Cage Until Dawn as well, or no?
No, that's Supermassive,
Okay.
which is...
That was done really well, too, and very similar to
But
this.
the idea of a butterfly effect where you get to have far-reaching effects. I mean, it's Telltale games, right, where the so-and-so will remember that. And you're like, fuck, I'm going to pay for this later. Like, that bitch is going to hate me at some point. It might be in a couple of extra episodes, but...
I've let somebody die one time in the Walking Dead because they were like, so-and-so will remember that. And then later on, I had to choose between them and another guy. Like, well, they said they'd remember that, so I'm not going to keep them around.
They're going to... And so I do love the idea of feeling like your decisions matter. I go back and forth on the different ways of, like, the Telltale version where I don't get to see exactly what my decisions, where the branching paths are. I just kind of know based on the gameplay, versus this version or like an Until Dawn.
You like this better, you're saying? Right?
I'm saying I don't necessarily know. I go back and forth because
okay.
sometimes this is fun because I like to see the flow chart of like, oh man, that was the moment where I may have changed things. Let me go back and replay it. So this changes some of that replayability because you want to go back and see the different decisions.
Right.
There is also value to the Telltale version where you're just like, hey man, you don't know, but some shit's gonna change because of this, and you don't actually know what those branching paths are. Obviously, that's a lot more quote unquote like real life, where you don't know what your impact is. You just know you had an impact.
It also allows them to be a little lazy and not build into the game. Like here, there's accountability. You can see that you will see as this goes on, they program this game for so many different scenarios. Right. Like, whereas in Telltale, you're like, oh, okay, you might keep Carly alive, but at some point, if she's still alive, she's still fucking leaving. Right. Or you may have chose to save Sean instead of Duck, but Duck's gonna survive anyway, and Sean is gonna get fucked up, and Herschel's gonna be pissed off either way. You're gonna have to leave the farm.
So David Cage and supermassive games like Until Dawn, Inpatient, that kind of stuff, they go a much farther step with it, right? Where they build out these crazy branching paths. I mean, just still the concept that like the main character could die 20 minutes into it, or could be a major part of the end of the game, is already in and of itself amazing.
Yep.
So I do love the butterfly effect as a concept. I think he is much more going after the real impact in the story versus Telltale, like a lot of people say, and I know Dodge just said what we were just talking about, the idea that there is an illusion sometimes of impact or of decision making. Sometimes that illusion can be just as valuable, right? If I have a feeling that what I'm doing is having impact, that can change the way I play a game anyway. Even if maybe in the end you would have tied that up anyway. You would have tied up that storyline regardless of my decision. It does create this kind of illusion of having an impact on the story, whereas his is, David Cage is far more of like, no, your decisions are legit impacting the story, not just an illusion.
And let me show you where.
And then you can go back and see, which is very cool. I do like that. And from a replayability, I do think it's cool, right? To be able to go back and be like, I want to go back and re-see if I had been like more of a dick, like how would that have played out? And then how would the rest of the game be if Connor dies in the first 5 minutes or whatever, And so like, I like that idea. I think it's a commitment to a version of storytelling that is this gets back to your point before that people were saying, oh, it's like Westworld, or it's like, it's like Isaac Asimov's version of, the 3 rules of robotics that's been around for 75 years or whatever. The difference is games are just more, but by nature, because they're more immersive, because you force me to make the decisions, that a movie happens to me, a book happens, to me, a game happens with me. So I have to take responsibility. And I actually have had situations where I've agonized over decisions where I'm like, fuck, oh my God, if this game lets me pause, I've had games where I've paused it and been like, all right, I'm fucking old. Like, what do I want to do?
I force myself to play through
right.
it.
And that's the thing is like, that's why I also do like, number 1, being on a clock. Number 2, like, Mass Effect started doing that where it's like the timer starts going down to make you be like, no, dude, you don't get to think about it. Like, make a decision. It makes you feel like the real world, right? Like, if you say, what are you going to do? Like, CraigMakk, are you going to punch me in the face, or are you going to try to talk me down? I can't be like, all right, just give me a minute to think about it.
Right.
Let me Google this shit and see what's going to happen. Like, this shit has to happen, and it has to happen now.
And inaction is a choice in real life.
And I love that I love inactivity, just like Telltale games, where one of the options of speaking is not speaking at all. Like, I love that kind of shit in games.
Right.
So the consequences of these games and the feeling of you having to deal with the outcome that you put upon yourself by the decisions you make makes the version of Westworld that this game is inherently more interesting, or at least as interesting as watching Westworld again, because I'm also a part of the story.
That's what I love.
I think it's so cool.
Passive. I'm not a great passive learner to begin with.
Right.
You stick me in a lecture like back in school, like I fucking hate. Even now, like when my job makes me go to training and I have to sit there for 9 hours and listen to somebody for 8 hours and listen to somebody fucking talk, I squirm in my seat. But I'm definitely a better on the job kind of learner.
Right.
So anyway, that's why I appreciate the video games. But so again, we have a lot. We have a brewery to go to today. By the way, we're going to be filming. Again, I don't know if I've said this, but we have our podcast. We're going to be filming our Halloween episode, like parts of it today, clips that we're going to then insert later on. We're going to be visiting some haunted houses in the New York and New Jersey area as many as time allows. So I don't want the time to run. We're going to be visiting the New Jersey Brewing Company. I think it's called. Some great stuff over there. Yes, that's what it is. I got to remember to bring that growler.
I'm looking at his growler right now for the New Jersey Beer Company, which looks amazing. I'm very excited to continue to drink because I crushed that bottle of meatloaf about 5 minutes into this. And so I have not had a beer in a while, so I'm starting to feel the alcoholism kick in. So we should probably jump on that.
Dave, Don, I wanted to, by the way, I wanted to ask you really quickly if you get it in before we conclude, if you played this one all the way through. It sounds like you have. I had the opposite. I really love this game for a lot of different reasons, and I just thought, especially the fact that we can sit here and have these conversations are amazing. Also, I do want to say that we've been very fortunate. Every time we do one of these projects, we did A Way Out. We had Jim Sardonic in there constantly with us, and we also had, I think, was it Blue Max that was in there, or Jigs? No, it was BMF Jigs, I think, that was in there with us, commenting through. And yeah, thank you, Don, for watching those. And like when we do these playthroughs and when we do the podcast, we've been very fortunate to have always somebody chime in the chat that has really brought something to the table. You've definitely added to this discussion just by being in the chat, brought up some really good issues. We probably wouldn't have got into the David Cage subject as much if he hadn't highlighted it. I wouldn't have known that there was like people that didn't really like him out there. I thought he was a huge success.
That was a good. You brought up an interesting side point that allowed us to get a little deeper into the pros and cons of his version of telling, which is very cool. Down on this game. No, I appreciate it. And again, I have only played just that part, so I will not go so far yet to say that I love it because I don't know. I haven't played it all the way through. Jess clearly has established that he does. I am interested so far. I am being cautiously interested because I will also agree. I played Beyond Two Souls, and I think that was a cool idea that I didn't actually enjoy the game. I thought that was my biggest letdown of all of his games. I thought.
Is that the one with Ellen? What's her name?
Ellen Page. Yes.
You didn't like that? I heard mixed stuff on that because some people said it was great.
Yeah, I didn't like it. I thought the gameplay was actually legit terrible. Like I thought the gameplay side was his biggest failure in that game.
Damn, with Ellen Page in it and it sucked, and the other guy was in it too. They had another famous actor in it. It was the doctor or whatever. Right?
Yeah, so I think it was more of a failure in he had a cool idea and just failed on the execution of the storytelling and the gameplay.
Don said the writing stunk.
Yeah,
Dialogue?
The writing is garbage. It's not well written. It's very poor dialogue. It's like, it's just, you could tell he was reaching for a brass ring that he never even got close to. But yeah, 20. I agree. I
Really?
borrowed that game.
Damn, that sucks. I really wanted to play that.
I borrowed that game, and I was very happy that I didn't pay $1 for it. So you may like it, right? You might be more accepting of some of the failures than I was. But it was, yes. It is like a bad sci-fi movie. It is written poorly. The gameplay is not fun.
Those can be great sometimes, in a campy way, right? But this game,
so that's the thing, is it didn't even hit that. It wasn't.
We can't even laugh at it.
No, it was like, it's more that it's upsetting playing it, because you're like, this is dumb. It's like, what the acting is bad right now, and you're not even making me do cool things for the gameplay. So that's not fun. The puzzles are stupid. Like, the things you have to like solve. Like, I remember there was this entire part of the game I was like, I'm Googling this because I'm not even trying to figure out. It's so stupid that I don't even want. It's not enjoyable trying to figure it out. So I was like, I just want to beat through this part. But again, that's the range of the game, right? Because Heavy Rain is fucking amazing. I really like Indigo Prophecy. Yeah. Jason. And then you have the other end, right? So we'll see where this one falls. But so far, I'm saying I'm interested in it. I like where it seems like it's at least going. It doesn't mean that I'm not there. I might dislike some of the stuff. I might like some of the stuff. Jeff obviously already likes it, having played it all the way through.
I really love that they're going to...
Yeah, that was the worst part. That was the worst. The North Korean underground nuclear facility. That was really dumb. Yeah, it was really dumb.
Wow, that sounds like... Hey, if you get drunk, that might be really cool to laugh at.
You know what I would say for that
If
part?
it was a movie, that's where you could be like, wow, this is so fucking ridiculous.
The best part of that, if that even sounds remotely interesting to you, you should just watch Stranger Things, which also had a building that had an alien.
That's what I was
portal in the
thinking of, like something like that.
Which is 1,000 times better. So like, yeah, just check that out. So that's my watch that shit. Is just watch Stranger Things instead of fucking stupid Beyond Two Souls. But anyway, so I think we've hit pretty much everything that we wanted to talk about.
I'm looking forward to future chapters.
We actually played the game, but
you know what's when we said this was going to happen. It was the first one, so it was we were talking mechanics in this game. We were talking David Cage in general. We talked about the butterfly effect. We talked about the general issues. Every episode that happens after this will have another thing. I thought about bringing up some of the stuff that our conversation would have been leading into here. And I thought, you know what? There's a chapter down the road that's going to touch on just that specific subject. And when it does, we can talk that. So there'll be plenty of things. I love the fact that, at the very least, even if you don't end up liking the game, there will be enough interesting subjects that we will have this conversation. You can have these conversations with afterwards.
I'm down.
Again, thank you so much, Dom, for chiming in. You definitely made this a better project for you being part of it. Yes. And we appreciate it. We hope you keep watching. We hope everybody keeps watching. We will also upload, these will be saved on our Twitch, and we'll also upload it to our YouTube at youtube.com/liveManCave. Please be sure and subscribe to that. And thanks all. Thanks for joining us. And
thank you very much,
You got the broadcast button, bro.
We will see you guys on the next chapter of our playthrough of
Lord from the ManCave.
Live from the ManCave.
Oh, Detroit Become Human. Sorry.
Oh, Detroit. Yeah, exactly. We got too many things. Too many goddamn projects.
#fail.
Yeah, we're the worst. Peace.